Up next is Becky LeBlanc, who's dedicating this piece to all the family members and caregivers who have witnessed and walked beside loved ones during a mental health crisis. Here is Becky LeBlanc with a spouse's perspective.
Life had been going so well. My husband and I were happy, and despite some challenges, the life we were living was peaceful and light. And then, out of nowhere, it hit. His revved up talking. Was he always this talkative? His paranoia. Did he just say he was scared of our friends? And finally, that last morning when life changed forever, his threatening behavior based in paranoia. I run from my house. It is 5:30 in the morning, and I find myself sitting in my car a block away from home, calling a trusted friend to say something is very wrong. He is scaring me, but I don't want him to be arrested. What do I do? I drive the few blocks to the police station, unable to believe I am doing this. I tell them that my husband is in our house screaming and not making sense, and then add, when you come to help, please don't turn on the sirens, because that would wake the neighbors and embarrass him. Little did I know that by the end of that morning, our street would be lined with police, fire, and ambulance, all flashing their lights, all showing our quiet street more activity than it had seen in recent years. All I could do was stand in the driveway with the neighbors gathered round and watch my screaming, naked, restrained husband be taken. One neighbor leaned in gently to say, "Becky, that is not your husband right now." Another calmly wrote down the address of the hospital they were taking him to, offered to take my dog for the day, and brought me coffee from her home, even asking what I wanted in it. Just milk, thanks. When the terrible memories of that morning creep up on me even now, it is these memories of grace that make them tolerable. That morning was our traumatic introduction into the world of mental health issues. To preserve his dignity, I will say simply that my husband's behavior at the hospital that morning ensured that he stayed that first time for a month. I will also say there are things I witnessed during his break that I will likely never share. Mostly because when I have my mental health crisis someday, I fully expect him to return the favor of not making my most embarrassing behaviors public. But also because anyone who heard me try to explain what I saw would try to apply logic to his behavior, and there is no logic. The confused mind does confuse things that are unfathomable to the clear-minded. Back then, I knew so little about how it all would go. I honestly thought he'd come home from that first hospitalization, say something sweet like, "Wow, honey, I'm sorry I lost my mind that time," and be old Joe again. No, not even close. I know now that the mind heals very slowly. My husband was hospitalized 4 times that year, which was shocking to me because in his entire 42-year existence prior, he had been hospitalized 0 times. It took months, but eventually his thoughts cleared and he was no longer confused about what was real and what was not. But next came a deep depression that lasted for several years. During this time, he slept most hours of the day, and he did not find joy in any aspect of life. Suicide was a daily possibility, and yes, he had a specific plan. It's a delicate balance being a caregiver during times like this. One of the truly frustrating things about mental health issues is that there is no one to blame. During those years, he slept through my birthday, never once asked how any part of my life was going, and didn't utter so much as a thank you for keeping the bills paid or the household afloat. He was not at all impressed at how hard I was working to figure out insurance coverage and co-pays, or at the number of hours I spent making phone calls to track down decent providers. He could have cared less about how much time I missed from work to help him get set up with the help he needed. He was too sick to care for himself, so any expectation that he would care for me was not realistic. But still, it hurt. It was crystal clear to me why many marriages in this situation end in divorce. During those days, I remember being in the middle of Zumba class thinking, I wonder if he will be dead when I get home tonight. I also remember driving home from work during that time thinking to myself, is today the day things will turn around? Is today the day life will get better? And I want to say to the caregivers out there, I understand how lonely and thankless this journey is. I want to tell you that none of this is your fault. None of this was his fault. None of this was my fault. Fault doesn't even matter. The task for all of us is still to try to pick up the broken pieces and put our lives back together. It took 4 gut-wrenching years for my husband to find his way back to life, and it started with the smallest things. A lighter tone of voice when he was on the phone, opinions on things as simple as what he wanted for dinner. Years out from the break, the words, "I think I felt happy today," coming from his mouth shocked us both. And the day did eventually come when I realized on a drive home from work that life was actually getting better, that the holding on to him while he held on to life was actually working. Today, his mind is clear. He is happy. He says, "Thank you again." After a long time of what seemed like no progress, it clicked. Was it the therapy? Was it the medicine? Was it time? Was it his stubborn determination to hold on to life even while profoundly broken? Was it his amazing wife? I don't know, but I think it was a combination of everything. There are still and always will be difficult days. Mental health will always be on our radar now in a way it never had to be in the past. Much like how an ankle that has once been broken will always be a bit fragile, the mind is like that too. We have no control over our loved ones' journeys. Still, for those of you going through the worst of it right now, I sincerely hope that your loved ones find their way back home again too. But regardless of if that happens, I hope you know how much you matter. And if no one has said this to you lately, thank you. You are an unsung hero with an important story to tell, and someday I would really love to hear it. Thank you.
Thank you, Becky, for representing the much-needed perspective of caregivers. Joe LeBlanc, Becky's husband, says that mental illness turned his reality upside down and changed how he views life. Joe now sees his life with a renewed hope that he wants to share with others. Joe will perform his original song, "Breaking Through."
I think I'm the only guy in the show that has a roadie, so I just like to give it up for them. That's a hard act to follow. Life has a way of dealing us some undesirable cards, but just like a bad game of poker, I think we all try to do the best with the hand that we're dealt. My first undesirable card was dealt to me at the age of 17 when my doctors told me that I have an eye disease that has wiped out over 3/4 of my vision and that in a matter of years I would probably be completely blind. That was a pretty heavy hit. But for over 20 years, I lived with optimism and I accepted my visual impairment, and I definitely thought that life couldn't get much worse than blindness. About 5 years ago, I would realize that blindness was the least of my worries as I experienced my first major mental health crisis. And it took the form of a period of mania that led to a full-blown delusional break, in which, as Becky was telling you, I was carried out of my house, handcuffed and strapped to a gurney, kicking and screaming for my life. And I would spend the next month in the hospital waiting to be stabilized on medications. My mental break effectively shattered every bit of optimism and hope that I ever had for my life, as well as many of my beliefs and my sense of personal identity. It was shortly after that that I went into the darkest depression of my life that lasted for over 4 years without relief, despite numerous medications and professional counseling. Month after month, I held out hope that my pain would go away and that some sort of peace would come back to my life. Something had to change, because I know if change didn't come, deep in my heart, I know I wasn't going to make it out alive. And in my depression, I gave in to feelings of hatred toward my life and feelings of fear for the future. And it took several years before I realized that that pain and that hatred and that fear was acting like a magnet, drawing pain deeper into my life. But something did finally click. I started to change, and I started to monitor every negative thought that I was having about my life and my situation at the time. And instead, I took on the practice of finding one good thing that took place during the day. And I stopped giving my attention to the things that I hated about my life. And it seemed like short order that my depression actually started to lift. And now I could actually start seeing little bits of beauty that were surrounding my life. I continued the practice for the next several years, and my depression was put deep behind me. And today, I now live with renewed hope and love for my life. And thankful to Becky. Breaking Through is a song that I wrote as I felt myself coming out of that darkness. I think I'm getting twisted here. Okay. What if I break through to the other side? All my dreams remain, all my fears subside. Breaking through to the other side. What if love was all we ever did contain? Would fear and joy fill my heart? Would pain still remain? Breaking through to the other side. Breaking through to the other side. One day we will leave this shore. Fear and doubt will be no more. I will lift my voice and fly like the eagle. I will glide. Breaking through to the other side. Endless searching hearts, finding peace within. Bathe in brilliant light, sing of joy that knows no end. Breaking through to the other side. Breaking through to the other side. One day we shall leave this shore. other side.